Good afternoon. You know we don't do that at TCU. Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody for coming out to this Against All Odds, and super happy to talk with Tim and Terrence Maiden. One thing that'll be new if you haven't seen this before is we're going to spend some time having a conversation, but we're actually going to do a little Q&A this time, and so that's what these footballs are for. So prepare your questions and also your agility skills so you can catch the footballs when we throw them to you. So how you guys doing today?
Doing great. Thanks. Thanks for sponsoring.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the name of this series is Against All Odds, Stories of Grits and Determination. So we always start with the same question, which is, how do you define grit, and when is the first time you remember you had to use it? I'll start with you, Terrence.
Well, first of all, I'd like to express our appreciation to TCU and to Neely for having us. This is an incredible honor to be back on campus and to share. So thank you, TCU, for having us. For me, when you think about grit, you know, the best way I can describe it is imagine having to run a mile and then you see a hill, right? And then you have to sprint up the hill. That sprint is grit. It's sort of being willing to sacrifice, do the extra work, and to grind it out.
Yeah, I guess for me, kind of similar. I think grit is a combination of passion and perseverance. It's this resiliency to look a challenge and an obstacle directly in the eye and not flinch, and have a commitment that even though I know it's going to be a struggle, even though I know it may be some adversity, I'm willing to go through it, right, and to not compromise or retreat.
So when is the first time you guys remember having to use this grit, when you saw that hill for the first time?
Man, you know, it's interesting. I think we learned it very early through football. You know, the reality is my dad is here. He was my first football coach. So, you know, football is a tough sport, and it's very competitive, and you have to, you know, put in that extra work if you want to start. And so I think from a foundational standpoint, you know, we were sort of ingrained with the idea of having grit to be successful.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. It started really early. I think for me, for his first time experiencing grit, you know, obviously me being the better looking twin and the smarter twin and the most athletic twin, it took a lot of work, right? So it's a lot of grit. But I also reflect on, it was my junior year in high school. Terrence was already getting scholarships, and he was getting recruited because he was an all-state player. And at that time, I was barely playing as a junior. So I'm going into my senior year thinking, man, I don't even know if I'm going to have the exposure or the opportunity to even get recruited to play collegiate football, which was one of my goals. So that summer, it was a lot of pressure on me to really perform, and it required a lot of grit. I know my dad would get up and cook eggs and rice, so we would eat eggs and rice every morning for breakfast, and then we would go and work out, and then we would come back home, rest a little while, and I'd make Terrence and go out and we would practice in the evening time. We was actually doing tour days in high school, and it was just because I realized if in order for me to achieve this goal, it's going to require more sacrifice, more of a commitment, and just all that time I put in, I was able to, you know, again, get exposure and opportunity to get a scholarship at TCU.
So it sounds like you guys need to thank your dad for all them eggs and rices. So let's start with that. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of your upbringing, how that built kind of your foundation, and what was that like?
You know, we were very fortunate. In our community, which of course is very predominantly African American, we were fortunate enough to have two parents in the house. And I think that sense of balance was very helpful. I think also we had a good balance in the way our parents sort of reared us, where my dad was more the disciplinary and my mom was sort of the tender hand. And so I think for us, having that sort of support, but then also what I appreciated most is that my parents would be at our games, but they didn't push us to do anything. They encouraged us. And so I think having that freedom to pick our path, if that makes sense, gave us that sense of confidence. It was sort of the wind at our back. And then the other thing I would say is that we grew up in Oak Cliff at a very unique time. At that time, Carter High School was the place to be, and it had a great athletic program, getting kids and scholarships, and so we were the beneficiaries of that. You know, Tim and I, of course, earned scholarships here, and our older brother earned a scholarship to Notre Dame. And so, you know, all those things sort of worked in our favor. I just felt like, you know, we were very, very fortunate.
Yeah, I would just add, you know, Terrence, I mean, we were really raised in a community, and having a two-parent household was really unique in that environment. A lot of our peers, teammates, people from the church would come over, and you know, when you reflect back over it, you know, sometimes they were just looking for. They call us the Hustables. You remember the Cosby Show? Those of y'all remember the Cosby Show? We was the Hustables, and they would come over. They knew that my mom was going to cook a meal. They know that, you know, they was welcome, always welcomed, and so we was in an environment where, you know, like Terrence said, that football was just because that's our way of life, just being exposed to it, but it wasn't something that we felt that pressure. Our parents try to keep perspective and balance. We were sharing with some students earlier today. We sung in the choir, church choir. And so people knew us as choir boys, you know, football players that was church choir boys. So, but yeah, we kept everything balanced and in perspective. Yeah.
Did they have to make a bigger choir roll for y'all when y'all was?
Definitely for Terrence.
I don't know if I still believe that. So you mentioned not necessarily having this pressure to play football. But most people refer to you guys as the Maiden twins, but they don't know you actually have two older siblings, right? One of which, as you mentioned, actually had a scholarship, played at Notre Dame, et cetera. So talk a little bit about the other two Maiden boys and kind of what that example they kind of set for you guys and living up to that expectation.
Yeah, so we're the youngest, and our older brothers, it was interesting because we had the opportunity to learn what not to do from them, you know, and so it created a very, very competitive environment, right? And so as you can imagine, 4 boys, we get into all kind of mischief. And but the other thing that I sort of appreciated was the brotherhood, right? Where we can have some really honest questions and we can talk to them about life and they could give us some real perspective. The other thing I would say is that, in particular with Alton, because he was so successful athletically, it inspired us, right? You would see his teammates come over to the house, like, man, I want to be like that guy. And I was in a meeting this week, and it was another gentleman that went to Notre Dame, and I was sharing with him that Alton's senior year, we had like Joe Paterno in the house, Steve Spurrier came, Lou Holtz, like these people that you see on TV. So you like, man, I gotta go to college. I want to play football. So that was very inspirational.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of things with Alton. Alton, he's the middle one, and he was extremely competitive. Like, we would play basketball. Have y'all seen like the movie Friday, Debo? He was Debo. In fact, his nickname was the Incredible Hulk in high school. That's how big this guy was. And so we'd pick up basketball, and if we fouled him, no, he would foul us. We were actually playing football on the basketball court, so he throwing us all around. And if we touch him, he would call a foul. And we said that wasn't a foul. He said he would actually take the ball and walk off the court, and nobody would do anything to him. The game was over with. But Carenza was more docile, the oldest. He has this ability to communicate so well and so supportive. In fact, he was the one to drive us to high school every day. And we can commit to seeing him every morning. He would work, get off work, and drive us to school. But one thing that he was impressive about, too, was his communication skills. We would play video games, y'all. We would play video games with Carenza, and it'd be like going on 2 hours. He on the phone, right? He would talk the entire 2 hours nonstop, no break. And he would ask so many good questions. I would say, you know what? When I talk to this person, I'm going to ask that same question. That's how good he was at asking questions, so yeah.
Okay. So you referenced Carter High School. So we know we're going to talk about grit, right, and kind of how you go through highs and lows. Give us a little backdrop into Carter High School, that environment. You obviously had two brothers who went there before, so you didn't have to necessarily make a name for yourself. And for those who don't know, has anybody seen that movie Friday Night Lights? You remember the team at the end that actually won the game? That's the high school they went to, right? So talk a little bit about Carter High School. You guys obviously both were athletes there, so, had some juice, I'm sure. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we was there at a very unique time. It was rich with a lot of good, incredible athletes. In fact, our senior class, we had 22 individuals to get scholarships. Our backup running back went to Oklahoma. Our quarterback went to Tech, USC, Texas. And so it fueled us to really be, bring your A game all the time. It was an experience. Every individual, the top talent would come to Carter because they knew they would get a scholarship. But also just the campus experience. It was almost like college. We would actually, the first time I flew a plane was to go in high school going to play a game. Normally you would drive the school bus, right, the district school bus. Now we would fly planes. And we were just on a whole different atmosphere, yeah.
Yeah, at Carter, our motto is pride, respect, and responsibility. It was also about community, but to Tim's point, 5 of our games our senior year is at Texas Stadium. So we got exposed to just sort of being in the spotlight a little bit, in high school, which a lot of other players, especially in high school, never had that sort of experience. I would say being in school was a little like lean on me, because it was so rich in culture, and the faculty there really cared about the students, right? And Dad is here again, but he actually led the Dad's Club, the Booster Club that would buy stuff for the team that kids couldn't afford, to have certain things. So it was a real true family environment.
So you guys were successful in high school at Carter? Tell me a little bit about what that success looked like for you guys.
Yeah, we both did well. So I finished all state, and Tim, I think, finished. Did you make all districts? No, he finished all district. I'll give you a hard time, man. But it was fun, man. We was driving over. What we remember most is the relationships. Okay. It's like the friendships that you built, like the grind, the workouts, spring workouts. Those are all things that are sort of etched in your memory from those times.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, it's the camaraderie with the football team, the football program. Obviously for us to be looked by not only TCU but other universities, it was just impressive. Once my older brother Alton was getting recruited, his whole room was nothing but all these universities that wanted them. And when we first got that first letter, I forgot the name, I think it was Northwestern or something like that. We thought we did something, right? When you first get a letter from a university expressing interest in you. So it was a great experience, very great experience.
So you had Lou Holtz, all these folks in the living room with your older brother. How do you guys end up at TCU? Talk a little bit about that story, because a lot of people don't actually know how this came to be.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that we actually committed to Texas. And they sent us a lot of gear. We had the Texas hats, T-shirts. That's where we were going, and really excited about it, truthfully. And Coach Makovich was the head coach at the time, and he called Tim and shared with him that they had another receiver.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell a story.
I want to tell you a story.
So remember, I didn't play none my junior year, right? I just got on the field my senior year, and obviously Texas was recruiting Terrence very heavily, and I think I was just a byproduct because I was his twin brother. So I get a call, and it's Coach Makovich, and he said that, hey, I know we extended a scholarship to you all, but another receiver came in, and we offered him your scholarship. And the reason I'm saying this is because we didn't choose TCU. TCU kind of chose us, right? It's a very unique story. So I went to my dad, obviously just dejected. And I know our parents wanted us to play together. And so he asked me what I'm going to do. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I didn't even have a second university in mind. And about a week later, the head coach from TCU at the time, Pat Sullivan, called. And he said, Tim, man. I said, yeah, how you doing, coach? He said, doing well. And he said, I was watching game film on you, and I have an interest in you. I said, that's great, coach. Can I come down? And he said, sure. I said, coach, I got a couple of questions. I was watching this receiver on my older brother team at Notre Dame wear number 1. Can I wear number 1 when I go to TCU? He said, I think that number's available. I said, cool. I said, I got another question. He said, what is it, son? He said, where is TCU at? I had no clue it was in Fort Worth. I had no clue it was 30 minutes away. But Terrence ended up, I said, can my twin come on trip? He said, absolutely. So obviously, if I committed, they wanted Terrence as well. So we went there, and I jumped right on. I wasn't giving up no scholarship. I said, I'm all in. And then Terrence.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but when we came on our visit, what they typically do is walk you through the stadium at night, and they have your name on the screen. And so for some reason, I was walking by myself, and it's nighttime, and I'm going up to Coach Sullivan's office, and I'm walking through Amon Carter, and I see my name on the screen, and like this, literally this fresh air just came right across me. And I walked in Coach Sullivan's office. He was in there by himself. I said, Coach, if Tim come, can I have a scholarship to come here as well? And so that's how we ended up here at TCU. And our head coach at Carter told us, man, that's a great decision. Man, y'all are going to do great there. And so that gave me good reassurance. But I tell you the truth, like when we made that decision, like TCU was one of the worst schools, football programs in the country. Like we went 1-10 our freshman year, so I had to like rethink about a lot of things at that point. But it all worked out for the best.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So you're at Carter, you're flying on planes to go to games. You're playing in Texas Stadium. You come here and you win one game by a field goal, which is against SMU. So thankfully that was the win of that season. Talk a little bit about that transformation of going from being in a winning culture, now you're in college, which is different, obviously, being in high school. Talk about kind of some of your thoughts and feelings that freshman year and how you guys supported each other through that.
I think one of the things, our recruiter was Tommy Robinson. He was a young African-American coach that my mom and dad wanted to sit down and talk to. He became almost like family, and he really took Terrence and I, him and his wife, under their wings. They would actually pick us up, and because they knew we was involved in church, and take us to church service with them. It was tough. My freshman year, I was playing with first team, and I broke my collarbone, and then I was, the academic requirements and rigors of TCU was tough adjustment for us, and so you start to question, did I make the right decision? And one of the things, and Terrence probably gonna share, but one of the things that stood out, I was thinking about just going back to my old environment at Carter, where we were the man, right? And then I got a letter from my dad. He wrote us. In fact, when I got in from a practice, the trainer told me he had a letter, and I read it, and he told me, I know you might be feeling a certain way, just don't give up. Just hang in, everything will work out. And so that's what we did. Yep.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. For me, what kept me grounded during that season is my faith. Secondly, it was a vision that Tim shared with me about TCU. And I don't know if you remember this, but before we even picked TCU to go to school, Tim was like, man, T, I just had a dream last night. We was playing football, right? And man, we had on these dark purple uniforms, and like we had on these black socks and Nike shoes. And I'm like, okay. He said, man, it's TCU. I'm like, no, man, that's Northwestern. TCU, we wear Reebok. But is so, and he said I scored a touchdown, and the stand was filled, right? And this is a true story. Our senior year, we're in dark purple uniforms. Coach Fran changed that. Nike shoes. Tim scores a touchdown, and came back and said, "I told you." So sometimes you have to hold on to a vision. You know, even when in the darkest time, that's the only thing that can get you through that, is that sort of like that promise, you know, that dream, and hold fast to it.
So after that first year, well, first I want to start with this. So you end up having a transition of leadership, got a new coach. Talk about that transition and kind of what your thought was with how did he inspire you guys, and what did you take from him? Because I know that coach stood out to you a lot in terms of from a mentor standpoint.
Yeah, anytime you have transition in leadership, it's tough. You know, you don't know if you still have your position. You don't know what sort of, system they're going to run. And so there's all these questions and doubts. And Dennis Francione, when he came in, his mantra was a lot different from Coach Sullivan. And in my opinion, he's a great leader. And he put structure in the organization. And then also, he created something that I actually implement now in my business, is he created a leadership council. And so he didn't want it to make all the decisions. He wanted people within the organization, within our team, to step up and lead. And so I think a lot of our players started taking that sense of ownership, right? You know, this is our program. We're going to change this. And the other thing that Coach Fran did, and I still do this day every year, he had sort of a motto or a mission statement for the year. And I remember when he first came in, the motto for that year is, "We're all we need." You know, and the next year is "A point to prove." You know, so when that thing resonates with you, you know, like for me personally, like this year is to trust the process with me. So I still continue to do that on an annual basis, but I appreciate the fact that he came in and sort of revamped the whole look and feel.
No, that's very good. I mean, only two things I would add is, one, you know, we had the same players on the team that went 1-10, but we was divided. And so when he first came in, he would make us go bowling together, make us do certain outings together. We had to go to church together. We went to, how can I say it? We went to First Christian Church, right, which was pretty quick service, right? We got in and out pretty quick. And then we went to Old Baptist Church, right? And but we had a lot of fun. And I think he exposed us to different things, right? That was one thing. And then at practice, he would run us until we all came together and held each other up and looked out for each other. He made that a requirement. He would run us until we was unified. And I think that's really important. Like Terrence talked about too, I think another thing about leadership, he allowed his coaches to coach. He was more on the administrative side, and he kind of empowered and trusted his coach to do their job. So that was another leadership attribute.
Okay. So like I said, I know he made a big imprint on you guys, and obviously you've mentioned your dad a few times. How do you define a mentor? And what do you kind of look for one in one?
The best mentors are seen and not heard, you know. So I try to find people that I can lean on, and their actions line up with their words. You know, another big component for me personally is someone that is really sort of out the box thinker, like, and your mentor doesn't necessarily have to be an individual. It could be a book, right? So the sort of mentor that I found through my reading is Robert Kennedy. Like, I started studying Robert Kennedy's life, and although he was the brother of the former President John F. Kennedy, his life was really remarkable because he had this sort of really mentality where he was really hungry, but he could also take the back seat to his brother and serve from the back. But then also he had the ability to go to a community in the slums and relate to the people there. And his big thing was addressing poverty. So what I'm saying is that, like, a mentor is someone who can inspire you to maximize your full potential.
It's very good. I think for me, it's, well, when I think of a mentor, I think it's kind of described as if a person went on a trip and they came back to you, or let's just say if you saw a friend that went on a trip or a tour guide, right? You rely on them to kind of tell you about the experience, where to go. You may want to try this restaurant, stay at this hotel. We experienced this before. Or don't try that restaurant, it wasn't good, it's not what people thought. Or you see somebody on social media and you see they went on a trip and they're a friend, you ask about them. To me, that's a mentor, right? It's someone that you see went to a certain place or in a certain place that you haven't been there before. And you got the trust and rely on that person to give you inside information in order to enjoy that experience, right? And so it's people that have already charted that path before you, right? The path that you're trying to trail behind. They trailed the path, and now you're trying to follow behind them. I think that's a good mentor.
Okay, so you guys are obviously, football was a thing, athletics, et cetera. You're now getting to graduation. So talk a little bit about what that transition from college looked like. How did you find that first job? And what was that first experience of no longer being a football player, no longer being a student?
Well, I think for me first, I had to wait on Terrence to graduate. So I finished a semester before. I just want to put that out there.
So
I had to delay my graduation that was supposed to be in the summertime to graduate with my twin brother.
So
I just want to put that out there real quick.
You're the smarter twin as well.
I'm just saying. But the transition was really tough. Actually, we started out in education. I was sharing with some of the students that Terrence and I, during the summer months, we would work for Fort Worth ISD, and so they hired us to be permanent subs at McLean Middle School, right around the corner from TCU, teaching 8th grade students. And I realized that was not my vocation in life. So we ended up meeting with the athletic director, Eric Hyman, at that time, and the provost, and kind of doing some assessments, things of interest. And they told me, have you considered banking? And I never really thought about it. I had a degree in sociology, just a minor in business, so I thought, not having an accounting or finance degree kind of precluded me for that opportunity. But they introduced me with somebody at Frost, Kurt Vonderay. He was a scholarship soccer player here at TCU. And really, when I first interviewed, I didn't get accepted into the cohort, this credit program. And then I asked, I know I didn't get the position, but can I come in as an intern? I don't care if it's unpaid. I just want to learn banking. And they said, let me talk to someone. And then I got that deal. And once I got introduced or entered into banking, I was the first one there and the last to leave. And when that other opportunity came around to go through the credit program, I pursued that. So that's really how I transitioned into my career in banking.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is life takes you on this journey of highs and lows, right? And as you mentioned earlier, when we were graduating from Carter, I think we were at a high, right? And then the transition to TCU is very, very difficult. Right, not only through the athletic program, but also just getting adjusted to a totally different culture for me was a challenge. The same sort of experience happened at the end of my career at TCU, because TCU was on a high. Like, we finished very well in the country, just played 3 straight bowl games, and you're feeling really good about yourself. And now you're in this dilemma where you're having to start over again, and not knowing what you want to do. The sort of the uncertainty of what's next weighed on me very heavily. And I didn't really think about my career. To me, it was just football. And so it was, Tim mentioned, when we sort of made the decision not to play NFL and to sort of get into business, we both wanted to go into banking. You remember that? And that's what we told Eric Hyman that we wanted to do. And he suggested that I meet with Dale Ladner. I think he also introduced us to PD Shabay that's here. But he introduced me to Dale Ladner in commercial real estate. And man, Dale, I went over to Dale's office and I said, "Sir, I don't know what you do, but I'm interested." And so he said, "It's commercial real estate." He said, "I think you do well." He said, "It's a tough business, but you can do well." And so he brought me in as an internship, and then he introduced me to Stephen Kozlik over at Woodmont. And Whitman is the one that offered me the job to sort of get into development, and it's just been in the industry for 24 years now.
So what were some of the early successes that you had kind of in your career, and what were some of the things that you learned from it that you still use to this day?
I guess for me, early success was actually completing the credit program and having the opportunity to start in commercial banking. I knew I had the personality and the interest and the desire to be successful. I was sharing with some of the students, collegiate athletics, you learn some transferable skills that you can incorporate and implement in your profession. One of the things that really surprised me about commercial lending, and Terrence may speak to this too, but there's not a lot of minorities in there, so I didn't really have someone that I can really kind of go to and lean on to kind of help me to kind of navigate through this process, this path. But I do think, having Terrence there, him being in the commercial real estate, probably had the same experience. And so we kind of really depended and leaned on each other quite a bit.
Yeah, it was hard starting out, man. I didn't have a clue. Like I remember coming into Whitman's office with my Sunday's best. I had on the gold suit with the loud shirt. People putting on sunglasses when I walked by. Like I didn't know like you're supposed to wear like a navy suit and a white shirt, and I didn't have nobody to tell me that. I have no one to pull me to the side and say this is how we should act. And the other challenge too was when you play football, that becomes your language, right? And so the locker room jargon, you can't use that in the business setting. Right? So you have to go to Toastmasters. You got to learn how to have a real conversation with people. You got to learn how to look people in their eye and shake their hands. You got to learn how to eat with the right utensils. You can't use your salad fork for your steak. It's like things like that you just wasn't exposed to. And so I invested in learning when I first started and working hard. And like Tim mentioned, I was the first one there, last one to leave. And I think I was sharing with the students earlier, like we didn't have like technology today. Oh man, I would have been on fire, man. I've been so good. I mean, back then you had a pager. If you're gonna call, you had to call somebody, if you want to talk to them. It wasn't all the email and text messaging. I mean, so it was a lot harder back then. But I appreciate the sacrifice because it taught me the importance of working out hard. I see Bob Young here. He's a successful executive at Weissman, but I tell you, like in commercial real estate, it's all relationship. And if you can't be able to have a good conversation and talk with confidence and people believe in you, it's a real tough road.
I know one of the things that we've kind of discussed that's important to you guys is when you think about athletics, there's kind of a process. You get a trainer, nutritionist, learn your playbook, et cetera. How have you used those lessons from sports to translate into how you invest in yourself, whether it's through executive coaching and different things like that? Can you talk about what that process looks like?
Yeah, I think I was sharing with the students earlier, I always say that, but I think it's mind, body, and spirit. I devote time, even more than now, so it's understanding the importance of balance and understand the importance of mental health, physical exercise to help deal with the stress and the rigors of your job and occupation. Also, having a good spiritual foundation, I think, is critically important, and however that looks to you. But I think it's always trying to get back center, right? Because as you progress, you get knocked side to side. I mean, the part of life is challenges, right? I was sharing with the students. I don't know what your challenge will be, but you will. I can guarantee you will have adversity. And you have to find a sure foundation, something that you can draw back to and lean in on when you're confronted with those different obstacles. And so for me, I think, having a regular routine for us exercising, spending some time more now than ever, meditation. I'm actually doing yoga, believe it or not. So it's interesting, just kind of prioritizing your overall health is really critical.
Yeah, I would say that you're the CEO of you. And so you have to really reinvest in yourself. Now, my goal is to read about 50 books a year. I'm not like Cat Williams. I can't do 1,000 a year. I'm gonna try to get up, but I only can do 50. But I read a lot. To Tim's point, exercise and health is really important. I invested in an executive coach. The other thing that I do at the end of the year is I actually send out about 10 emails to people that I do work with or advisors and say, be brutally honest. Like, what are some of the things I need to work on? Like, what is it that I'm not seeing? And how can I improve as a leader within my organization and outside my organization? And so that feedback has been very helpful, you know. So if you're not continually working on yourself, you're regressing.
I like that. I want to shift a little bit. One of the things that we haven't talked at all about is that you guys actually have a foundation that's going to be celebrating its 20 years next year. Can you talk to me a little bit about the foundation, how it started, and kind of how it's evolved?
Yeah, I can. So our philanthropic work started very, very young. Is really our involvement in church. And we always had this sort of desire to just give back. I think it was really ingrained in us, to whom much is given, much is required. And so the foundation was birthed out of a need to, address some of the disparities in the communities that we grew up in, but then secondly, to be an extension of the church. Because if you drive through any sort of, in particularly black community, you'll see church on every corner, but not really an impact in it economically. And so we're just trying to figure out how can we elevate those communities in a way that's effective, especially from our time here at TCU, because we saw that a lot of it stems from education, because education creates career opportunities. And so we've done a lot. You know, we invest in a number of different programs. One of the first programs we did was Frogs for a Day, where we took about 150 to 200 students from, you know, inner city Dallas to the TCU football game. And that's their first time being on a college campus, you know. So it's little things like that that you can do that makes a huge impact.
Yeah, and the foundation originated in our living room of our parents' home. You know, we shared with our mom and dad that we wanted to establish a foundation. They were fully in support of it. As Terrence mentioned, when we initially started out, it was very grassroots. So we would partner with different organizations, and we would partner with them to put on different programs. The organization, when we started, was called Two Wins, Building Communities and Changing Lives. And once we hit our 10-year mark, we decided to transition more to a foundation where, given more of our equity in the community through 10 years of tireless work and efforts, to our impact in our business careers and associates like PD and, you know, individuals here today who really believed in our mission, we decided to transition to a foundation to become more of funders, where they would trust our assessment and judgment of a point of need and try to address and bring some solutions to that issue.
I love that. So next year is 20 years for you guys. What's next for the organization?
Yeah, I think we like to amplify our impact. We've done a lot, and it's my hope that more opportunities for us to voice some of the issues and challenges that are facing communities of color and how resources should be allocated to those areas. But also, we want to invest more strategically. Like, we're now starting to have conversations with major health systems about how can we make, you know, either an endowment there or things that, or how can we attract more healthcare to healthcare deserts? How can we get grocery stores in some of these communities? The fortunate thing about our work is because Tim was very influential at bringing 2 banks to a community that was black banks. Through my real estate development work, we're able to go get a grocery store. So we're at an interesting intersection where our professional and philanthropic work sort of cross very nicely. And so we want to continue to see ways that we can just better that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, God's providence, but the path that we pursue professionally really aligns with some inequities and some gaps that we was exposed to early. And I think the reason we've been so successful and supported by our community is because we understand how to align those resources to really make a visible impact, right? Bringing banks and access to capital has always been a struggle in disenfranchised communities because only thing you see there are littered with like payday, check cashing places, and to provide tangible financial solutions and resources to the community is valuable. Terrence, on the development side, Redbird was a special mall when we grew up, and just the lack of absentee owners and the lack of resources and support from, well, I'm not say that, not support, but just the lack of resources and opportunity and attention to developments. And Terrence kind of elevating and reimagining what that community could look like and getting buy-in not only from the city but also the surrounding communities was, just great.
So let me ask you this. For students, we're teaching them obviously how they're gonna encounter challenges and how they can overcome them. I'm curious how you guys, it seems like you found a way to intersect your values and your personal life as well as in your professional life. What advice would you give students of when they're thinking about making career choices, whether early or mid in their career, of how they can make sure those things are in tandem?
That's interesting. A couple of things. I would say, first of all, bloom where you're planted. There's a reason that you're gifted with education, you're gifted with different skills, different talents. How can I leverage that to a way to maximize my full potential, but then also how can my full potential impact the environment that I'm in, wherever I'm at? The second thing I would encourage students to do is to sort of just trust the process. The reality is you sort of have to find your way. It's sort of like you go on this path and the path sort of leads you to right where you need to be. But if you walk in integrity, right, if you continue to work on yourself, and if you seek those opportunities, they typically come your way. And what I've learned to do is to be really careful to decipher if I'm looking through a window or a door, right? Because a door opens, right? A window is for you to look through. And you shouldn't be going through every door, and you may not should be looking through. There are some doors that you're walking in where you should have been looking in the window, right? And there are some windows you're looking in when you should be walking through a door. And what I call that is discernment. And so realizing, what your gift is, why am I here, and finding that sort of destination.
No, that's really good. The only thing I would add is, I think it's 3 tiers. I think you should always be looking up to people that you aspire to be like and developing that relationship. I think you should always look lateral with your peers, having them to challenge you, growing with them, moving up with them. And you should also look downward to try to find opportunities to bring somebody else up. I think one thing about Terrence and our perspective on things, we're humble enough to realize we don't have it together, and you try to find people to help get you there. I think we've been really good for us, trying to establish strategic partners and alliances to help us further our mission and philanthropic efforts. But our commitment has always been to figure out how can we uplift the next generation. So,
I love that. And this will be the last question before we get to Q&A, so I hope you guys stretched a little bit to catch these footballs. So you guys have obviously been very successful. You've been a ton of awards, opportunities, things you've gotten. What's next on your list of things that you want to accomplish, both personally, professionally, and obviously with the foundation?
Well, I launched my own company 5 years ago, Russell Glenn. So it's a street that I grew up on. And I think the next sort of 10 years, we have some really bold goals as a company in around sort of impact development. You know, we're starting on the mall hopefully soon in Houston, that similar challenges of Redbird that we hope to make an impact. And then, you know, we're seeing a lot of different opportunities that come our way. And so for me, I want to get out the way and be able to lead and find people and surround myself with talented young people to help carry the company's mission. But then also, I'm starting to realize that change really happens on a legislation level, right? And so I'm getting more involved in political action committees. I'm not running for anything. But I do think that having someone at the table to be able to talk to leadership about addressing real challenges in urban communities and the blight in those communities is going to be very important, because if you don't have a voice at the table, you never get heard. And so I think that's sort of my goal.
I guess for me is to continue my trajectory in the banking and finance environment space. I want to maybe, my goal is to get in the executive level where I can really have some tangible influence on investment strategies and how banking services deliver to all communities that we serve. I think that when we as financial banking boards and leadership understand that every community is valuable and have something to offer, and the asset is critically important. I think from a philanthropic standpoint, just deepening our impact with the Maiden Foundation. We're partnering with some universities, hopefully can get even deeper with TCU. But as an adjunct professor at UNT Dallas, establishing a credit program to establish a pipeline of future commercial bankers is really important to me. I want to see that program develop out and put a stamp on it. But those are two things that I want to kind of highlight.
I appreciate that. Now we're going to go into what's called a rapid fire session. So they have not seen these questions, and I'm thankful that the holidays are past, so you guys won't have to fight over Thanksgiving dinner with these. So feel free each one to jump in first. What's the last good book or podcast you read, and what did you take from it?
Last good book. I've been reading a lot of books. I think the last one would be actually Grit. Grit, I was reading that this morning, I think. Again, just having tenacity. And then there was another book about a gentleman. He was a military guy. The name escapes me. But he was talking about the military process, being regiment, being really focused, being intentional in how they develop. They assemble attacks and formation based on what the opposition is doing, and just being kind of strategic, doing assessment of where you're at and how do you progress.
I think here we go. One of a good read is "You Can't Hurt Me" by David Goggins. I mean, I've read that book probably 3 or 4 times. It's a really good read.
Okay. What is a saying or quote that you live by?
My stand is stay in the race. It comes from Hebrews 12:1. Don't get weary in well-doing. And it talks about there's a great crowd of witnesses. And when it talks about that, it talks about people that had gone before you and who kind of charted the path that's looking at your progress and development, and people that you physically can see. And it talks about lay aside every weight that can easily beset you. So it teaches you about priorities and not getting so caught up in the things that can weigh you down, and run this race with endurance and patience, and don't get weary in that journey.
For me, it would be only results matter.
Okay. What is a skill or talent that you have that people will be surprised to know that you have or can do?
Play golf.
You cannot play golf.
But it sounded good,
You
though,
try
right?
to play golf. You cannot play golf.
I think I can sing a little. I sung in the gospel choir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, that's a good one. I don't know.
So you have no talents or skills
I
besides
have
football,
I think I have
football and
talents,
real
yeah.
estate. That's it.
Gosh, I'd probably say sing too. I mean, I'd have to steal your
Y'all
thunder.
gonna get a little duet going here, or? So that actually leads to an even better question. What is your go-to song for either motivation or karaoke, since y'all both can sing?
I know Tim's. I can answer that for him. Anthony Hamilton.
Best of me, Anthony Hamilton.
That's his song.
Yeah.
What's the one I do? My Girl.
Okay. In 3 words, and remember your parents are here. In 3 words, how do your friends, your kids, wife, or former teammates describe you?
I would say focused, relatable, and humble.
Well, I was gonna say humble too. I was gonna say just tenacity, and I would say Did you say relatable?
Come on with your
I
own
would say,
answers,
I would
man.
say
Still
servant. I think they would describe us as like a servant leader, committed to service.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the last question before we go to Q&A. When y'all was growing up, who won between the two of y'all in a one-on-one basketball game?
Me.
Which one? Okay. Okay, well, we're going to open up for questions now. If does anyone have any questions, please raise your hand. And like I said, you guys get to toss a football, so we're going to see.
Yeah, the thing that I'm discovering is a leader, first of all, should be authentic. The second thing is, in which I've struggled with, is control and being willing to trust people. So being a little bit more vulnerable and being willing to let other people, be out front. The other thing is to be a voice of encouragement and guidance. But the real role of a great leader is to cast vision. So you should be the person to be able to tell the entire team or organization, this is where we're going. I think that's how you lead effectively.
Yeah, and I think that was very good. Only thing I would add is a great communicator, being able to communicate thoughts. Also, I think, as Terrence mentioned, developing other people. I think a great leader is resourceful. You give people the information, the tools, and the resources to be great, and you allow them to exercise in their gift, right? And their effectiveness. Just give, touch points, just feedback.
Challenges is, I use Redbird for an example, to get people to believe. And that's in the community and outside of the community, by the way. And so you spend so much time trying to convince this vision that you have, and especially when there's so much pessimism around it, it's a real struggle. That's one of the downside. The immediate benefit and opportunity is that you're addressing real needs. Like UT Southwestern has made the access to healthcare so much better for that community. The new Tom Thumb grocery store is going to address like this food desert. The other thing that we have been able to do is sort of think outside the box, right? And we did at least 50 community meetings because we didn't want to come with your solution. You need to tell us what you need. And so one of the things that was birthed out of that is that it's like there's a lot of single mothers in the community that don't have childcare, so they can't work. I was like, wow, so how can we address that? So we donated a space to an early childhood care center where people can work. Okay, we can take care of that so you can work on campus. So, real estate is an interesting vehicle to make change. And I wish more investors and developers see that as a true opportunity going forward, that you can actually make money, do well, and make an impact and better our community.
That was
Ooh.
a very, very good question.
Y'all definitely paid him to say.
I have, and I had some initial conversations with some local churches. You know, a couple of churches. Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship already has like a credit union, right? But that's always been a desire. You know, Terrence and I was thinking long term, and I haven't really thought about it, leveraging his real estate acumen and understanding what are the proper investments. Me coming from a lending standpoint of good investments, I think it can be easily done. And I think too, just building up that resume too, I think we're positioning ourselves that may be a possibility. So maybe you're speaking that over us, you know? Maybe that's going to be a reality.
There's a couple of ways. One is just really through perseverance and just continue to try to create a seat at the table, which I believe our ancestors had to do. The second way is sort of through relationships. And so you can't have one conversation with a person and think you're going to be at the table tomorrow. You know, that takes time. It's really building trust. You know, it's a project that I worked on. I had to meet with the owner for like 18 months before he really believed, like, okay, you're the right person. And sometimes it takes that level of commitment or dedication to it in order to get there. So those are two things I would say.
And I think we shared a little bit earlier. This is a very good question. Lori, thank you all for coming, to you and Scott. We both operate in an industry that is predominantly controlled by, let's just be honest, white males, right? There's a limited amount of minorities there. So there's always this perception anyway that you have to overcome. I was sharing with some of the students that, you know, unfortunately sometimes in corporate America, unlike the football field, it's not a level playing field. And it's all about relationships. And I think what you have to do is not get so consumed with that, is to work extremely hard, what you say, double down, because I'm not just representing myself, right? I'm representing my dad, my family, my brothers. I'm representing a community behind me, some young guys that trying to get a seat at the table. And if I recant and retreat, they will never get an opportunity. And because people before us had to do the same thing. And so what you have to realize, there's significance in it. And I think if you get with the right people that has a seat at the table, have some influence to get you a seat at the table, I think it would make an organization even more effective, because now you're getting perspectives from people that may not have had that seat. If some seat needs to be occupied with someone that looks different than you and got a different set of experiences and exposure, I think it adds value to any organization.
Yeah, I mean, you don't turn a big ship overnight. I mean, but I think what has been most effective for us is a program that we have implemented called Elevate, which is a male leadership academy. It's a 1-week program, so it's a true sacrifice. Tim and I are there every day for Elevate. And when we first started, we do it on UNT Dallas campus. And when we first started out, you know, we was like, okay, let's start small. We had like 35 young men, all high school. And the principal had to pick these students. So they were borderline students. Like, they could go either way. And so we spent an entire week teaching them from everything, how to tie a tie, how to network. We do professional headshots, what utensils to use at dinner. We talk to them about the importance of giving back to your community. We go meet executives. So the most interesting thing is that you see 35 guys that first year that didn't even know each other. And at the end of the week, they're like brothers, right? But then they have this confidence. And then when you see them go off to college and graduate, like, I get calls at least every week from one of the mentors that came to the program, just finished from school, do you have anybody I can talk to for a job? Because they saw what they could be, right? And it takes time. The frustrating thing is when you see someone come and give a speech and then they're gone. You know, somebody needs somebody that can be there to see these guys develop. And then the last thing I would say about that is that first year started at 35. The third year, we had a waiting list of like 400 kids trying to get in.
And I would just add, it's tangible. So we're not just saying we had a program. So one of the gentlemen, his name is Kevin Bell Jr. He said one person. He went through the program. He was our rising star. He went off to college, St. Angelo State, got his master's degree, worked in San Antonio in the police department. He told me he had a desire to come back to Dallas. There was an opportunity for a leadership role in Arlington. My former teammate from high school, Tyrek McGuire, is a sergeant there. Introduced him, and now he's in a leadership role, being mentored by Tyrek McGuire. And he was our rising star as a high school student, now finishing college, his master's degree, and got a good job, good paying job, and trying to change the community as well. So yeah.
That's powerful. I think we need to raise a hand for that. If we have any other questions, we'll take that now. If not, we will let you guys get the last word of what you'd like to leave the audience today with.
Well, I first just thank everyone for coming out to hear our story. It means a lot. Dad, Michelle, thank you so much for coming out and your support. And then all our friends that are here, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful for this platform and opportunity to share.
Same here, just so many people. I don't want to start naming and missing people, but thank you all for just taking time out to kind of hear our journey. I want to thank B of A again, and great job moderating, and kind of, and Neely School and TCU. Thank you for the influence you had over our lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.